I am curious to see what she's got to say about this. Actually, the problem with open world gacha games, Wuthering Waves. I'm curious what she's got to say here because we spoke about this in the Is Wuthering Waves Just Better video when we were talking about the problem that all open world games suffer from inevitably, whether they're gacha games, they're online games, they're open-ended live service games, or they're story games. See if she's got anything to add or, you know, maybe make points that I've never even thought about. Let's see.
I started to get a
Check out Hex Juice as well. She makes great content.
little bit fatigued by open world gachas. Can I say that? Is that too controversial for me to say?
That's a fair take, I think. Especially with the gacha space. I think the way gacha games are set up, they kind of don't lend themselves to open world games, in my opinion, in a way, just because of how the games are designed to be, the way the farming works, and, you know, for mats, for character leveling, for weapons, for whatever it might be. I kind of think there is a like a, it feels like it kind of goes against that being open world. That's why I actually love Wuthering Waves and Genshin as well, to be fair, because they are open world ARPGs with gacha systems added to them. One's just got a fucking really savage system, and one's got a little bit of a better system. And one's a lot more generous than the other system, because I get almost insulted when Hoyo were like, hey, here's 30 Prima Gems, or here's 30 Polychrome. It's like, oh, wow. Oh, man, just a few more of those and I might actually be able to make a pull. But yeah, let's preface it by saying, I think one of the big problems with open world games in general, well, not problems, but it's just an inevitable thing that comes from them. As you do more in terms of exploring, there becomes less to do in the world, and the world itself almost becomes a chore to the game. It takes away from the game, because you've got all this space to travel around and not much to do in it. So it becomes, as I say, a distraction from the actual gameplay. That's why I really like Wuthering Waves, because traversal of the world is made enjoyable rather than stamina being sucked off constantly. So actually getting around feels like a pain in the butt. And this is a thing that happens in all games, whether they're offline, online, or whatever. As you do your points of interest and farm certain areas, those areas then kind of become vapid, empty spaces that just don't pull your interest, do they? And especially if you have to traverse to places, they kind of become a little bit annoying. Of course, you've got beacons and waypoints and all that sort of stuff, but the space in between those that you need to get to sometimes to do certain things, dailies and such. That's why dailies are so painful in Genshin, in my opinion, because the world itself makes them worse. So, yeah, I definitely think it's a factor that makes them worse as they go on.
Subscribe. I've started to get a bit exhausted by open world gachas. I think the thing about an open world game, what makes it special, what makes it incredible, is getting into the world that first time. Like Elden Ring is an open world game, and part of the joy of that open
exploration, you lose the magic of exploration as you've explored everything, really. You know, it's just part of it. Any game really loses that special magic from the first time, or, you know, the world as you explore it, it loses all that magic, and then it just kind of becomes an annoyance in a way sometimes.
World is getting to explore it, like the freedom of it.
Again, that's why traversal is really important.
But like the second and third time you run through the game, you don't really give a fuck to see all the sights in Elden Ring. You need to get your weapon, you need to get your items, you need to get your armor, you need to beat the bosses you need to beat, and you need to get the fuck out of there. You don't care anymore. And the thing is like, in a gacha game, you're supposed to technically log in daily. You're incentivized to log in daily. And so the allure of that open world, I think, dies down rather quickly, because it's like, okay, the open world is fun for like the first week or two after you get a new area, and then it's just space. And I'm starting to
agree. I don't think it's necessarily much about the logging in daily that makes it a problem. I think in Genshin it becomes more of a problem because dailies are just such a pain in the arse. But I think this is a problem that all games have, is that, like I say, and it probably exacerbated more in gacha games because you're encouraged to go and farm to get mats, and if you want to level up quick and get certain content done, you'll go and rush around the world to get all these mats, and you won't necessarily take things in, and it just kind of quickly loses that edge. But at the same time, story games suffer from this too. MMOs suffer from this too. I think the only games that have really managed to kind of keep the world exciting after exploring it multiple times, in my opinion, and even then it loses a little bit of its charm, is probably Red Dead Redemption 2 and GTA games, especially GTA 5, because the worlds are so immersive and built so well. They're so alive that it like a lens to you to be able to keep exploring and finding fun things to do. Or even if you're not necessarily doing something fun in terms of the game, you can just kind of enjoy the world. You're immersed in it because it is so alive. And I don't think any other open world games really have managed to tick those boxes just yet. And this is what I was saying before about games. Remember the years where games were always, open world games were talking about, well, the map's so big in kilometers and our map's this big, and look at they put up images comparing map sizes as if that was a thing that was better than the other game. And we were sold on that for a while. You just got to look at the Just Cause games. But as a map gets larger, the points of interest become further and further apart. And then you have lots of space where there's not much to do. That's why open world games are a little bit more condensed and deep and layered, tend to be a little bit more enjoyable than the open world games. Of course, gameplay is a massive factor to that, but I believe that as the world is bigger, it becomes more vapid. And of course, as I said, with the gacha games, the systems are made for us. The systems are designed to push us to go and farm the overworld, so it probably wears off even faster, that magic of being in this open world. So I can understand exactly where she's coming from. I don't necessarily think logging in for the dailies is a thing that does it, though. I think it's all the other elements to the game, and it's just a thing that happens in open world games as well.
To feel like, baby, I just don't care. I think that a lot of people got into gacha games with Genshin or Wuthering Waves and expect something.
True, definitely with Genshin.
That this just isn't. Gacha games did not start being more like games until after Genshin. So people who started playing at Genshin don't necessarily understand the allure of brain rot the way that.
Agreed. This is exactly what I was just saying at the start, that, you know, the way gacha games are designed and the systems, they really do lend a game to not having all of that extra bloat of an actual game, because that's not what you're really doing. It's all about farming mats, to level characters, to go for pulls, to do it all over again, to hit a bit of content, to get DPS check, to go back to farm your mats, to get back to that content, to clear it, and then you go on the cycle forevermore, where when Genshin introduces a system of, hey, how's about we add make a game, and then we intertwine a gacha system into it.
That's somebody who played like regular gacha games before. I like this game. It has a lot of issues, glaring issues, but there is a sort of feel-good enjoyment aspect to this game that I do genuinely recommend. I almost just wish that more gacha games would try totally different genres and try totally different things and maybe innovate.
Agree. Give us a third-person shooter. I know we've got Snowbreak, and I know there's others coming. Give me a third-person shooter with the polish and the quality of like Wuthering Waves and Hoyo games. That's what I want. I want a Division-esque gacha game. Give me that. I'd even take a first-person shooter, but I've said it multiple times. The desire to maybe pull characters then, I don't know, it's all going to be in abilities. When you do your specials, you'll see your character because you're not going to see your character. But dude, give me like a shooter, man.
Outside of what has already been done, because I think that gacha has so many places it could go, but it just hasn't yet, because ultimately gacha is a monetization.
And give me an MMO. I want a gacha anime MMO. I keep looking at Blue Protocol and being like, I want to play that game. I want something that's like a Hoyo Wuthering Waves kind of looking game, or an online MMO. I just don't understand why it hasn't happened yet. It's probably cost. It's probably because MMO is a niche. But I think if you add in the Hoyo spice, you know, the anime spice, the gacha spice, it could be massive.
System first, and then you can build on top of it whatever you want. And so I'm just starting to feel like maybe I would prefer that gacha games spend less time developing an open world and more time developing interesting gameplay.
I was talking about this earlier actually as well. I said this, that I don't think we need many more open world gacha games. I'm looking forward to Azure Familiar, Ark Knights Enfield, and Project Mugen. But it's all about the gameplay. That's why I like Wuthering Waves. That's exactly why I like Wuthering Waves, because the combat and the gameplay is fucking top tier.
Is this an insane opinion? Because I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying that maybe gacha games being open world just doesn't really add that much to the game. Like,
Agree.
Just not sure that it adds enough to the game that I consistently want that. Nah, you are right. Gacha can easily be 3 AAA type games that they choose not to be. It adds a serious time sink. Like, it adds a lot of time sink. It adds a lot of complexity. And honestly, don't you think maybe if like games put less effort into developing an open world and more effort into developing everything else, the games would be better than trying to pad out an open world that isn't really that meaningful over time?
It's a fair point. It's a fair point. It's like I say, it all depends on how you build the world, in my opinion, how dense and interesting it is. The more the world feels alive, the more it can add to that. But I do agree, the more time that's invested in building big open worlds or worlds that are super alive, and you have to think of all these extra things to make it enjoyable and continue to be enjoyable, it is going to take away time for gameplay mechanics and story and all the other elements as well.
This has been rolling around in my head for a while because there's something about WoWa. It's just like I don't really want to explore the open world all that much, but I think that Gacha could be other game genres and they just kind of don't be doing that. And maybe
I think that's why Ark Knights Enfield will be interesting, because that isn't fully open world, I believe, is it? That's like sort of semi open world. There's like, I think there's like areas, which I think that's probably like a happy medium. I love Wuthering Waves, by the way. I love the open world, but I think that's where there might be a happy medium where you've got these smaller, subdivided, semi-open world areas that have exploration, but it's not like this all-encompassing space for you to explore that becomes less interesting, and they can maybe make these smaller spaces more interesting and the gameplay a little bit more interesting within these spaces. But as I say, I'll go back to Wuthering Waves. I think they've got it just right, in my opinion. The way you traverse the map, the combat, it kind of... I enjoy the open world, and I haven't yet got to that point where I'm not enjoying it, but I also haven't 100%ed each area. I think that's what a lot of people do, because the desire to run for mats, which is kind of how I say they don't work that well together. The gacha system really kind of works against an open world, is because you go farm all these mats, because instead of doing all these little runs like you would in a game like this, the open world adds to mats and stuff, and echoes or whatever it might be, materials, whatever you can think of, currency. You are pushed to go and farm that really quick, so you end up 100% in each area really quick. That probably makes that part of it way more boring now, should I say. I haven't 100%ed one single area yet in Wuthering Waves, which is probably not, I'm not playing it the right way, or I've not had that desire to yet. I like just exploring as I go, which is probably why I'm finding the world to still be interesting to me.
If they didn't have to make these like massive open spaces, right? They didn't have to make these big open worlds and put effort into other parts of the game. I just feel like maybe they'd be better games. I don't know. Like, it's fun, but it just is like, I just kind of feel like I'd want different stuff. Because like the reality is like the beauty of an open world game is ultimately exploring it and seeing it all for the first time. But that really you
True, it's true. I also think as well, it being alive is a massive factor to what makes an open world game fun, in my opinion. As I say, going back to GTA and Red Dead, there's a reason why people still go back and play those games now, because the world they're great games. The world that Rockstar craft, it's just unparalleled.
You capture that perfectly in a game that is a story that you sort of play through and it ends. But when the game doesn't end and it's an open world that they just keep adding on,
it exacerbates the problem.
The open world sort of loses its like allure and its meaning over time. I thought it was
I'd go one step further. This is and it probably will happen to Wuthering Waves and me with Genshin, even though I'm not even up to date on Genshin. It doesn't just become less fun. It actually actively becomes a chore, and it's even exacerbated even more in Genshin, because the way stamina works and traversal works and dailies work, that it makes the world seem super frustrating to get around, in my opinion. It really becomes annoying. And that, she's obviously there with Wuthering Waves as well. I'm not there yet, and I hope by the time I do, there's lots more areas to explore and to enjoy. But I totally get where she's coming from. She's making a great point. And I've spoke about this multiple times with gacha games, that and open world games in general, it's just a fact of them. It's just gonna happen.
It was just Genshin combat that bored me, but the exact same thing happened with WoWa in the same time frame. People have some whack opinion that TV segments are padding and should be more like Genshin. I think that the TV segments are a bit of game padding, but I don't think this game should be more like Genshin. I would not like more Genshin.
Good, so Kaku, ready.
Like, it's just a perspective that I've sort of been gaining, because it's like exploring the open world in Wuthering Waves was really, really, really fun for like the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then the excitement of that sort of died down. And so like maybe people really, really still want that. But like, I honestly just think that gacha as a genre could do so much more. I just feel like gacha as a genre could be more, could do more. And then they
Of course, it definitely could. The problem is with gaming, it's like movies, it's like TV shows, it's like whatever sort of entertainment. When you get something that's a hit, people try to replicate it, don't they? You know? We saw it with battle royales, extraction shooters. You get a hot genre. Everybody wants to do that because they want to get a bit of that. They want to get a bit of that cash flow. They want that hype. That's why you're probably going to see a bunch of open world gacha games because of how hot Genshin was. There's companies going to want a piece of that. You'll probably see more games that look a lot like Star Rail as well because they want a piece of that also. I do agree that we want developers to go down new avenues, but it's a lot more risky for developers to do that. So I understand from a development point of view that trying to mirror something that's already been successful makes sense. I do agree as well. As a gamer, I love to see new things that are interesting and intriguing, for sure. And I do agree as well, the gacha system lends itself for more short bursts of instanced game loops as well that allow you to get from here to here to here to quickly, and it to be more compartmentalized for particular things that you're doing within the game. Because even in Wuthering Waves and Genshin, you do end up doing that a lot. You really tend to be on the open world when you need to farm a particular resource or you're after echoes. Other than that, you're hopping around instance things, aren't you? Whether it be holograms, whether it be tacit fields, whether it be the 4Gs, whether it be the Tower of Diversity, the elusive realms, it all almost becomes compartmentalized in that sense then. And the open world is just an extra thing that you don't really need to deal with. So it does make sense. And as I said, that happens with all games really. The open world becomes a less and less of an enjoyable part of the game. But it's just it's pushed faster, isn't it, with gacha games?
just don't. And so I guess I'd rather like games go into developing other stuff, like other parts of games, other types of gacha games. There's so much potential behind gacha that these companies don't do because they sort of remake things. I'm excited for Azure Premilia, to be clear. I'm excited for Azure Premilia. I think the game looks really fun and really cool, but I think there's a certain part of me that feels personally pretty fatigued by open worlds. Like, even in Elden Ring, like, I don't really give a fuck about the open world in Elden Ring anymore. And the only time I've been excited about the open world again in Elden Ring was for the DLC, because it was new. I honestly think...
Yeah. That's why it makes sense for Wuthering Waves and Genshin, for when new areas come, they are incredibly intriguing and add a lot to the game, not just in space, but things to do that are interlinked with the open world. Events that are not just copycat events, but actually make you do stuff in the open world, but it makes the open world feel like it's working with you and not against you. But that's really hard to do though as well.
I think that like a gacha Souls-like would be really interesting. I know that that's really crazy, and
that's what, is it Unending Nights? Undying Night or something? There is a gacha game that's coming that is a little bit more Souls-like. I hate using that term because it probably won't, but it seems that the combat's a lot more, I don't want to say slow. It looks fast-paced, but it looks difficult. It's all about your dodging and your parrying and that singular type of content that you get from something like Souls game. I think that looks very interesting, actually.
I don't know how they would do that, but it feels like it could be done if they wanted to do it. I don't know. I want gacha to explore more genres. They kind of do the same genres over and over again. Have I lost my mind? A gacha side scroller? I don't know. I just feel like it could be more than it is.
I think any genre would work within the gacha space, really, because at the end of the day, the gacha system is just a system for gaining characters and weapons, really. It's loot boxes within a game, and the game has systems really designed about that. You know, it's like you had Call of Duty that had loot boxes, and whatever games had loot boxes, you had a game and then they have the loot box system, and it becomes a little bit invasive. But the games with gacha games are really designed, everything in the game is designed to link up to the gacha system, isn't it? You know, the mat grinding, the weapon systems, the way the characters level up, everything is designed to work with the gacha system. So it really, as long as developers think outside the box, any genre of game could fit into the gacha system, really.
And I feel like continuing to develop kinds of games that have already worked, like we're not learning anything about the shit. What about like just a straight up roguelike? Something like that. Roguelite, some shit. I don't know. Like why not try more things?
Suppose it would work. When you think about it, some of the end game content in some of these games, it kind of works like that anyway. It's just that how do you draw people without it being intrinsically linked to the roguelike system to get you to go for pulls without it, like I don't know how I'm trying to describe it. Whatever anyway.
Things,
I
don't
can't,
get traction.
I can't push my thoughts out on that one.
But
I know
they're
what I'm
older
thinking.
and
If it
kind of
comes to me, I'll say.
shittier. But like, I wish that these companies that can make like really nice, cool games would innovate more. I wish that there would be new games because some of these do.
I'm afraid that's just a thing within the gaming space altogether now. That's where indie developers come in. We are at a place in gaming at the moment where publishers control a lot of what's going on, and repeating IPs and repeating ideas works way better than trying something new. That's why we get a crap ton of Assassin's Creed games and Call of Duty games, and you know, developers look at this game and just try and create it in their guise, or we have freaking 15 versions of a game or 15 sequels of a game, because it is a fact that people do look at previous IPs and they're more drawn to them. It's the same with movies, and that's why we get so many remakes, because people hear the name and they're like, oh, but at heart, we do genuinely want something and need something new. We just think that, oh, when we hear a household name, it draws us to it. And I think the gacha genre is suffering from that as well. It's a hard loop to break out of, I think. It just takes a bit of balls from some developers and publishers in it to believe in the idea that they've come up with, to get it out there, knowing that this is going to succeed. But when you're putting a lot of money, your own money behind that, it's a scary thing to do, isn't it?
Exist in like older gacha games, but older gacha games are kind of.
That's why indies do so well, because you've got a lot smaller teams that can pivot a lot quicker, spend a lot less money. The game might not be that expansive or that polished level of AAA-ness, shall we say, but they come out and they're amazing. Because they've gone with the idea of making something that they want to make, that they think people will want to see as well, that's different. And a lot of the time, that's where we get all our banger games from now, don't we? And then what happens? AAA games jump on that bandwagon and we get a bunch of copycats, and it kind of loses that allure.
We can be honest. We can be real with each other. Older gacha games are really shitty. Like, they're ass. They don't look good. They don't play well. Like, they're not exciting. They don't have a lot of the more modern features of gacha. I would love it if they just made like more types of genres, because it feels like gacha games sort of go back to the same things over and over and over again. And I want more. You want?
At the end of the day, majority of gacha games are just RPGs with different combat systems, aren't they? So that's why I say, like, shooters, I feel like that's a good space to go down, is some shooters, and just maybe doing something unique in the way abilities work, whether it's first person or third person. But I think at the end of the day, the systems are designed in a gacha game, in the gacha genre, to be lean towards role-playing games, because role-playing games have those sort of mechanics. They are basically, most gacha games out at the minute are RPGs or JRPGs or ARPGs. And the systems that you would normally just get in a game as you leveled up and found things and explored are then implemented into the gacha system or the farming system, aren't they?
Want to pull a PNG that does nothing? No, I don't, because 99% of gacha games back are for mobile. Yeah, so I want them to like start doing new things again. Because I mean, like, gacha games have sort of defaulted to being sort of the same stuff. I don't want any more open world gacha games. I've already gotten those. I don't want any more, like, I like this game. I don't want any.
I disagree there. For me personally, I do want to see more open world games, because I think there's more to be done in that space. It doesn't have to be massive, expansive open worlds. They can do, like I say, segregated, smaller areas. But take that out of it. I like the exploration side. It's just got to make it so that the world becomes annoying as late on as possible, and the other systems are done well enough that it kind of becomes more of just a distraction or an extra thing that's there later on, in my opinion. But I agree. I would like to see more other types of gacha games. I'm down for Azure Premilia, Enfield, Mugen, and any others that are coming out. But I agree as well. I would like to see more of the other types of games. But I'm definitely okay to see some more open world games.
More instance-based gacha games. There are a ton of those that already exist. I don't really want a turn-based gacha game. Those exist in multiple forms already. I wish that these companies would make that is new. I don't know. I just want more from my games. Have you tried Nikke? I have. The gameplay for me is not hitting, and I am a bit of a gameplay freak. Has it usually been like that? Yeah, but like, what if it just like wasn't, and then we could get more people into these kind of games? I think gacha games has a potential reach much further than it actually takes, and I wish that they would just try other stuff. Because right now, the ultimate reality is that gacha games are really stuck in a very particular niche.
I think they're stuck in a particular niche as well, not just all the other stuff I've explained as well, because they're massive in the East, aren't they? And players in the East kind of want a particular gameplay style as well, one that allows them to grind, but also allows them to throw money at stuff to get what they want out the game as well, and stuff that they can play in short periods, but do it daily. Just because of the way things are in China and other countries as well. But yeah, I think this is a thing that all games are suffering from at the minute. The industry as a whole is suffering from this very problem.
Realistically, most gacha games are sort of taking from the same box of like players and just sort of spreading them around and splitting the player base over and over and over again the more games come out. Like, it's not like we're really bringing in that many new people.
The way to bring in new people, in my opinion, at least in the West, is a AAA developer or publisher gets on board. Or I don't think that will ever happen or succeed. For one, is because how dogged people can be against microtransactions in the West, for one, but also because typically people who play these types of games, and what's going to drive you beyond characters being really fun and intuitive and cool to play as is the waifu element. It's the sex appeal, isn't it? And let's face it, Western developers are really scared of that for the most part, and having characters that have that sex appeal and are going to be objectified in that way, and that being a big factor to why people want to get them. I think a lot of Western developers will be absolutely terrified to even go near that, especially with all the stuff that we've got going on Western gameplay, with all the Sweet Baby Ink stuff. I just feel like they're not gonna want to touch that with a barge pole. So I think that's the way we get new people in the space, at least in the West, because it's a lot more saturated in other markets. But in terms of the West, is via AAA companies getting involved. And I know Huyo are a AAA company now, but I'm talking about your Western household names. But like I say, I just don't know if that's ever going to happen because of the fear of, one, microtransaction culture, and two, the culture around the type of characters that are going to permeate the game as well.
To gacha. And so it would be really nice if they made a wider variety of gacha games, because the reality is like, the problem with Wuthering Waves is like, it is actually pretty decent. It's a good game, and I think it actually could bring in a wider audience. But the problem ends up being that it just looks like Genshin 2, and so a lot of like normal gamers aren't gonna play it because it's just like, it just looks like what Genshin was, and I didn't want to play Genshin either. Like, I don't.
I agree to a degree on that point itself. I don't think that's necessarily what's going to stop people coming in, is it looks like Genshin. And I don't think a game being totally left field is going to change that. I just think that that's, like I say, another symptom of gaming in general. That's why indie games are such a savior, are such a shining light in the gaming space, aren't they? Because they do bring in new stuff. I think this is a problem that's only going to be fixed when one development team or publisher decides to do something new. But then what's going to happen? That new thing's going to be the hot thing, and everybody's going to copy it.
I don't know. I get that there's like a certain amount of like, oh, it's development, it's opportunity cost and all that shit. It just does kind of like suck that like gachas seem to just only be able to be one thing. And you could like lower some of the gacha aspects of it and make it more appealing to people. Do I think that any of this is going to happen? Not necessarily. Because like, I've talked about things I'd like to change about this game. Do I think it's going to happen? Not really. But I still like to talk about it. That's kind of my job.
Yeah, some good points made in that video. Bringing up a conversation, like I say, that we've spoke about in more streams as well, that I've spoke about in other videos also, and not just for gacha games, in the problem with open world games in general. is they suffer from that same thing as once again, the open world kind of becomes a distraction and becomes an annoyance and actually becomes a detriment to the game once you've kind of got past the magic of exploring and it's like, oh, I've got to go over there now. And it's okay if there's a quick travel point or a fast travel point, but usually the thing that you need to get to is 30% in between or 70% from here. And it's like, right, I've got to fast travel to there and then I've got to travel to here and then I've got to get the thing and then I've got to travel back to there and then I need to fast travel over there. And it's almost like that adds an element of a chore to the game. Whereas if you're in a hub type game or a segregated game or even an instance game, that's not so bad. But I think it just is exacerbated by gacha games anyway, because you're told you need to. It's part of the game. I've got to go here. I need to farm this. I need to get this, and then I have to go back here to do this with this. I've got to go over there to fight this thing to get this thing, and then come back to level up this character or level up this weapon or ascend this or get that. And I've got to do that multiple times. So I think it doesn't really matter the type of world you're in. That problem's there. It's just an open world just makes it way more apparent. So I think it's a problem with all games really, but it is exacerbated in the gacha game space. So yeah, it's a great video actually. Glad that somebody else has been talking about that as well, because I've been talking about that in my streams recently, and I think it is a factor and a potential negative for a lot of open world games within the gacha space. It's about creating that sort of world that makes you want to keep coming back to it, doesn't, even though you've got to do these chores within the world. And I don't know if for a while we're going to get that in these sort of games, because I think it's a secondary factor. It's just like, hey, here's this pretty space for you to play in, and the other systems are far more important. That's why in a lot of gacha games as well, sometimes the actual gameplay loop itself is kind of ass, because it's kind of just designed to pull you in initially with a little bit of an excitement, and then the rest of the game's designed to push you towards the gacha system, isn't it? That's why I really like Zenless. That's why I really like Wuthering Waves, because I think the combat, the actual gameplay loop itself is really fun. So, it's enjoyable. And I'm not taking anything away from Star Rail and Genshin as well. Love both of those games. But especially with Star Rail now, I think, it's become a space for haves and have-nots massively. And as we were talking about before with power creep in Wuthering Waves, it's far more apparent in that game that you need to have the new stuff. But anyway, we're getting off track there. Yeah, the problem with open world gacha games, Wuthering Waves, another great video from Hex Juice. You should definitely check her out. She makes some amazing content. And yeah, I agree with some of the points she's got to make there. Definitely good video.